Look at this chisel striking marble. It is violent, chaotic, and loud. Yet when modern philosophy attempts to analyze the creation of art, it ignores this physical reality, relying instead on the quiet, sterile vocabulary of the gallery spectator. The philosopher Etienne Gilson argued that this approach yields a categorical error. To accurately analyze what he terms the arts of the beautiful, philosophy must discard the viewpoint of the person looking at the finished piece. To correct this error, Gilson returns to the classical methodology developed by Socrates and perfected by Aristotle, strict logical deduction. This method requires us to define concepts sequentially. We must first assign every object of thought to its broadest category, or genus, before identifying the specific traits that set it apart. In its oldest ontological sense, the genus of art includes all instances of deliberate human making. A carpenter building a table practices art just as much as a painter finishing a fresco. If we treat a finely crafted chair and a Beethoven symphony as philosophically identical simply because both are made, we lose the ability to accurately define either of them. This presents a Socratic challenge. Out of all the things human beings make, how do we legally isolate the unique arts of the beautiful from the massive background noise of general craftsmanship? The dividing line is found in teleology, the ultimate end goal or proper purpose of an object. Consider this Limoges dining service. It is crafted and possesses undeniable aesthetic quality, but its teleological end is practical utility. It exists to serve food. Contrast those plates with this intricate Baroque altarpiece. It occupies physical space, but serves no utilitarian function. Its construction is directed toward a different end. This is the specific difference that legally isolates the fine arts from general making. Their sole proper end is to produce things of beauty, purely for beauty's own sake. We must be precise about what fine art is not an act of communication, not a vehicle for moral instruction, not a didactic representation of reality. Demanding that a painting teach a moral lesson or accurately depict historical events imposes an external function onto the object. As philosopher Michel Dufresne notes, translating a work into an external circumstance neutralizes its immediate aesthetic experience and ruins its pure charm. We can map this Aristotelian deduction directly. From the broad category of human making, production branches into various applications: didactic, moral, and utilitarian. Eliminating branches that serve external purposes, we isolate the single correct teleological path, objects produced solely for the sake of beauty. Isolating fine art strictly by its intended end is the only way to safeguard against judging a work by an educational or practical standard it never set out to meet. Once we have isolated the fine arts, we face an epistemological question: what specific human faculties are required to actually apprehend the beauty they produce? The apprehension of beauty requires a subject endowed with three specific tools: physical sensitivity, raw intelligence, and a crucial mediatory faculty, the imagination. Because perception is never instantaneous, the observer relies on the imagination to synthesize sensory elements across space and time, whether listening to a symphony or scanning the surface of a large sculpture. While these subjective faculties are required to perceive beauty, the beauty itself is not a mere subjective projection. The work itself must possess specific objective conditions. The first of these objective conditions is what the ancient philosopher Plotinus defined as harmony. Look at the Palladian Villa Rotunda. Harmony is the mathematically rigorous accord in the proportion of the individual parts, the columns, the porticos, in relation to themselves and to the overarching central dome. The unifying form of these proportional parts brings unity to the stone and mortar. By making the parts into one, it transforms a collection of raw materials into a singular, concrete being. Harmony, therefore, relies on exact physical relationships. It operates as an ontological requirement that allows the object to exist as a unified entity independent of the observer. There remains a second, more elusive objective mark of the beautiful, identified by Augustine and Cicero: claritas, translated as radiance or gleam. In Caravaggio's Calling of St. Matthew, this claritas is literal. It is the radiant, sensible quality,
the specific brilliance or glimmering of the paint that physically commands the viewer's eye and acts upon human affectivity. This physical manipulation of light and shadow provides the objective basis for any subjective emotional relationship we have with the painting. If harmony and claritas are physical requirements of the aesthetic object, we have to ask how a creator actually achieves them in reality. Here, Gilson draws a sharp philosophical line between two distinct modes of creation, talent and genius. Talent is functional. It is the ability to borrow external elements from past masters and seamlessly adjust, organize, and sew them together from the outside. Genius operates differently. Observe the chaotic, tightly controlled gyratory movement in Rubens' Battle of the Amazons. Genius appropriates external matter and generates a seminal form entirely from within, bowing only to the inner demands of the work itself. True beauty in fine art emerges only when genius forces raw material to submit to an original internal form, resulting in a work that asserts itself with the physical necessity of nature. Yet the physical act of creation carries an inherent tragedy, the unbridgeable gap between the artist's ideal vision and the final, real object. Ideal beauty exists as a pure concept. It lives solely within the mind of the artist as a seminal form, waiting patiently to be realized. The actual process of making art is a violent attempt to incarnate this immaterial ideal into a stubborn, real-world material. Look closely at the physical texture of Michelangelo's David. The laws of physics, the grain of the marble, and the limitations of tools inherently restrict and degrade the infinite richness of the artist's original mental conception. Because it must exist in physical space, every completed masterpiece is necessarily a poorer version of the artist's vision. Sacrifices are made simply to achieve actual physical existence. The artist acutely feels these material compromises and the loss of the ideal. The spectator, however, sees only the physical achievement and reacts with awe. The spectator only has access to the compromised, finished material. Because of this, their judgment is permanently alienated from the artist's initial ideal intention. This disconnect leads to a severe categorical error in modern discourse, conflating the philosophy of art with the discipline of aesthetics. The philosophy of art belongs exclusively to the maker. It deals entirely with the practical knowledge, the mechanics, and the physical struggle of Genesis. As Henri Fauchelevent noted, art exists only in the artist. It requires the physical act of execution. It is of the absolute essence of the artist to have hands. Aesthetics, conversely, is strictly the domain of the spectator, the professional critic, and the gallery. The spectator does not judge the art that makes the object. They judge only how they subjectively feel about the object once it has already been made. We have to draw a hard line between these two realms, the messy, practical mechanics of the maker's intent on one side, and the sterile realm of the viewer's judgment on the other. The spectator's fallacy occurs when we mistake our own aesthetic, emotional experience of an object for the actual ontic reality of the art itself. To accurately engage with fine art, philosophy must stop asking the creator what a work means. We must recognize that the work invents its own laws and allow the aesthetic object the essential privilege of sufficing entirely by itself.